I'm
There
a
we go.
professional. I can do this. Hello, and am I on the right camera? Yes, totally. We're back. No technical issues whatsoever. We are the Build Propulsion Lab live at DPE Summit 2024 again, hopefully, and hopefully we won't drop the connection halfway through the interview like happened to me last time. And right now I am here with Lee Faus. Did I say that right?
That's correct.
Oh my goodness, I should have asked you first. So that we can talk about some of the things that you were talking about. So you're from GitLab.
Correct.
And one of the things I was hoping to talk to you about is the things we were just talking about in the corridor around
Sure.
things like platform engineering versus what developers care about versus, you said, operational efficiency
Yep.
and something else.
So when we talk about developer productivity
Right.
versus operational efficiencies.
Right. So I want to hear about that.
Yep. So a lot of people in the industry, when I go out and talk to them, there's a lot of conversations around efficiency in the build process. So when you think about all of the different steps, all the different jobs, all the different stages that we go through, let's say that a build takes 20 different jobs to be able to execute. And if I go ahead and I make a change and I get to job number 19 fails, I have to go back, I now have to introduce another change to be able to get it to be able to try to be successful. Well, every time we go to run all of those different jobs, we're spending compute, which means spending money. So when we look locally on our development workstations, that compute's relatively free because we've already got a sunk cost in the cost of the laptop. When we look at productivity, we are trying to be able to do measurements from the how productive am I, how much time am I spending in a day actually completing tasks, things like that. So we got two different data elements that we're trying to capture. One is efficiency, and that could be done in dollars, that could be done in time, either one, time is money. And then on the developer productivity side, we've done a study at GitLab where during an interview that we've done with about 500 different developers, they're only spending about 25% of their day actually writing code. Right. And most of our customers want to see that get increased. So the question I pose to a lot of our customers is, can I do productivity? Can I get that number up if I'm not doing efficiency?
Right. So that does, so okay, so can you get that number up? And what's the trade-off with the efficiency or the correlation with efficiency?
Yeah, the trade-off, let's start there.
Right.
The trade-off is really hard. When you go ahead and look at the way organizations are designed, we hire a lot of developers. And what I have seen throughout the last 20 years is we'll hire 100 engineers for every one operations person. And that operations person is really usually broken up into 4 different roles. So they might be a network engineer, a database engineer, a platform engineer, and then a cloud engineer. So it's not even having one. I've got 0.25% of one person. So a lot of those people are very overwhelmed. They're asked to do a lot with very little. So if we go back and look on the developer productivity side, if my builds are taking a really long time and I'm sitting back and I'm waiting for that feedback loop, well, yeah, what do I do while I wait? I mean, do you want an engineer moving from task 1 and moving to task 2 and context switching back and forth? That creates a whole other set of problems. So you have to start on one or the other. You've got to figure out what is the data you want to collect around developer productivity, and then you have to map that back to what does an efficient pipeline look like. The other thing you've got to do is we don't do enough of this. We don't have common terms that we use on the operations side as we use on the development side. So as we were talking outside, I find it very interesting how many people have pipelines that are 10 years old. They've never changed. And part of that is they're scared, there's risk. They might not have built the pipeline, it's somebody else's, and it's code. They might not understand Bash, or it might have been written in Groovy, or it might be in some other language that they're not familiar with. So,
probably in YAML.
Or in YAML. And so they're like, it's working, so let's not mess with it. Well, we should do proper things like we do on the software world, and we should be thinking about doing refactoring of these pipelines. So if I'm able to refactor my pipeline and I know the data that I want for productivity, I need to do, I heard the folks at American Airlines today, and I really liked what they were talking about around value stream mapping and being able to think about not what tools I would be using, but what are the outcomes you want to achieve. So we don't spend enough time when we think about developer productivity about doing baseline testing and being able to say, okay, well, how much time am I spending? If a developer's spending 25%, then let's look at next year. What do we want that number to be? And if we know that there's a correlation between productivity and efficiency, what are we going to do? Where are we going to invest our money for refactoring pipelines to be able to make that feedback loop shorter, so that way we can accommodate and keep that developer in the flow and get them actually doing what we hired them to do.
I find this is really interesting because it's an area that I don't know very well. Like, I was very much a pure developer, tiny bit of DevOps, but the ops space is not really my thing.
Sure.
But like, one of the things I love about being a developer, if you do it properly, my understanding of it properly, is refactoring, automated testing, and having safety and confidence, which I think one of the other talks is talking about. How do you make changes with confidence and safely? I don't know if you know the answer to this question, like, how do you do refactoring of pipelines with confidence, without scaring people and you worrying about breaking stuff? Because this is the path to production. This is like how code gets from the laptop into where the users are going to use it. So how does that happen?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And too many times there was a really good question in the showdown yesterday afternoon, like monolith versus services. I think about the same thing in a pipeline. I've seen too many people try to say, okay, I'm going to build a 18-stage, 100-job pipeline so I can take it all the way from change all the way into production. And we don't want to think about things in those terms. We want to think about it and have logical breaking points and know I'm building certain things to be able to get the right feedback for me to be able to move it to the next stage. So I used to work at GitHub. Now at GitLab, I spend a lot of my time talking to customers about branching strategies. And so I'll talk to them around which branches should be protected, how do they want to move things between branches. And that is where I don't think we spend enough time. Like, if I have a feature branch, what should be my workflow for doing a pipeline on a feature? That should be a different pipeline than if I'm doing a bug fix. Right. And that would be different if I'm doing a security vulnerability remediation.
Right.
So each one of those, we should have different pipelines that can accommodate different needs. And then as I'm merging changes together, so my change myself might only go to dev test. So I shouldn't worry about that too much. Then when I'm merging into a protected branch, there should be another pipeline that is a little bit more robust. It's going to have a few more jobs. I'm not so concerned about the feedback loop because my task should be quote unquote done because I am merging my change into that protected branch. So now if I'm doing that and I've got a little bit more rigor inside that, I can increase the confidence level while also minimizing risk because I'm using proper branching techniques. This is very interesting. I've had a lot of conversations with folks at X and at Uber and at Facebook, and they do things a little bit differently. So in GitHub or in GitLab, you usually do it off of a branch and you do a merge request or a pull request. They actually do it off of every SHA. So every hash, every delta gets its own little signature.
Right.
So the way that they do it, because most of their work is in a mono repo, they have to do it that way because you can't break up. Git won't let you break things up at a folder level. You get the whole repo or nothing. So unless you're doing submodules, and then that creates a whole other a mess. So when you look at being able to think about smaller componentized pipelines based on the outcome that you want to be able to produce. So I've even talked to a number of customers. I'm like, if you're going to create a feature branch and it's never going to go to dev test because it's a bug or a feature or whatever, I just want to be able to get the code done, and I'm going to push a larger change set into dev test once I have multiple things. Maybe it's at the end of the day, or maybe it's at the end of a week. Well, why would I go all the way through to create a package? I might just do build and test. If I create a package, that creates a whole other set of things I need to worry about. I've got semantic versioning. I've got to know which branch I'm moving into. Is this, what's my naming convention I'm going to use for that package? And do I need to secure that package? Do I need to create attestations around it? Because it's just going to dev test. Then if I go in and I'm merging into main, or I encourage people to do a release development and then feature bug branch. If I'm going to a main or a release branch, then that allows me to be able to talk about are all the things I need to be able to go into production.
Right.
So that might be where I'm going to go ahead and create a signing authority for that particular package, because now it's something I want to track.
Right.
I don't necessarily want to track an intermediate package
Right.
that I'm only doing some functional testing on.
That's really interesting to me. So I worked somewhere where we were very much about like committing to trunk. We didn't do feature branches, and it was very deliberate because we were doing continuous integration, as in literally continuously integrate.
That's right.
So I have a lot of negative feelings towards feature branches generally, but I never really thought about it in terms of, but if you actually think about what that branch is for, it allows you to partition up the kind of activities you're going to do on that branch. Because what I've generally seen is you have your CI pipeline, which is not actually integration, but okay, pipeline which does everything, and you just reproduce that across all of your branches.
Yep.
And this does come down to a little bit in terms of like not understanding the purpose of what you're branching for and what you're trying to achieve with that.
Yep.
So similar to most other development problems, which is what are we trying to achieve and how do we get there instead of just cargo cultism-ing our way to let's just do everything because we're not quite sure what we understand.
Totally agree.
Right.
It is too many people feel like it's an all or nothing type of environment. I had coined a term about 10 years ago when it came to branching strategies. A lot of people don't know how Git really works under the hood. So most people who have tried to do Agile, so they build a sprint. Let's say your sprint's 2 weeks long. Well, I would go in these companies trying to do sprint-based development, and I would talk about, let's call it Sprint 11. So if I'm in Sprint 11 and I'm on Wednesday of the second week, and every task that's in the Kanban board is all going to be over 2 days worth of work. So it's never going to be able to make it into that particular sprint. What would most developers do? They sit back and they will wait till the next sprint.
Yeah.
So what if I could go create the next branch off of main, and I can create Sprint 12.
Yeah.
And what I do is I move the tasks that are all larger that aren't going to make it, I move them over into that Kanban board. And what I do is I start working on those things for those 2 days. Oh, but wait, that seems really hard. How am I going to get these things together? Oh, well, when I merge into my main branch, I can rebase all of those changes into Sprint 12. I might have some merge conflicts, but imagine the work that you've saved by getting those developers to continuously work across sprints.
Right.
So again, it's number one is people, number two is process, and I don't care what tool you're using underneath the hood. If you've got to have good requirements, you've got to know what are your outcomes you're trying to achieve, and then figure out how you get those tools to be able to accommodate that.
Right, exactly. The tooling is all about how to get the tooling to support your people, your process, and what you want to do, which is why the answer is always, it depends.
That's right.
You can get the tool to do what you want, but like you have to know what you want, or you can't get the tool to do what you want.
Totally. And when I think about different tooling, you want to have a tool that's flexible. If you have something that is very opinionated, you have to do a lot to be able to get it to be unopinionated. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about being able to have tools, not every project is the same. You may have 30% of your projects that fit very well in that opinionated model. What you want to be able to do is say, okay, well, I might now need 2 or 3 tools, but the output should always be the same. Mm. So if I've got a SAS scanner giving me a security report, I want to have a defined report that I can then use to be able to know across all of my projects. I have a common format that then I can go back and look, and I know what a critical is. I know what a blocker is, and I've got common definitions around each one of those. And then the tools should be generating into that format, so that way I can go ahead and put it into another, like in GitLab, we have a policy engine that we can then read out of those reports, and we can allow you to be able to set those policies. Can I merge that into a protected branch, and that helps to reduce that risk and then improve that confidence as well.
I really want to carry on talking about this, but we are running out of time, so I want to wrap this up. But before we wrap this up, is there anything else you wanted to talk about or anything else you want to mention?
No, I want to thank Gradle. This has been an amazing conference. I've met so many wonderful people. I think we need to do more of these. This was very intellectually stimulating for me. Too many conferences I go to now seem very salesy and marketing, and this has been one probably in the last 3 years where I feel like people that I'm going and talking to, I'm being challenged, and I really love that about this conference. So if you haven't attended, make sure you sign up for next year.
Great, thank you very much for that. And on that, I think we can wrap that up.